The night I saw her with another man, my world crumbled. Sitting in my car outside the hotel, I watched them walk in hand, laughing like we once had. My chest felt hollow, my fists pounded the steering wheel, and my heart shattered. This wasn't the life I had built with her. It was a stranger's betrayal. That moment didn't just end our marriage. It ended the version of me who thought I could fix what was already broken. It was my turning point, and though it hurt, it also set me free. But before we dive deeper into the story, let me know where you're watching this from in the comments below. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. In the summer of 2013, life felt like it was unfolding perfectly. I had a good job, a solid group of friends, and a clear vision for my future. What I didn't realize was that my life was about to change completely at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance. She stood out immediately, radiant, confident, and articulate. She had a way of commanding attention without trying. When we started talking, the world around us seemed to fade. She had a sharp wit and a laugh that drew me in like gravity. Meeting her was like finding the missing piece of my life, I'd later tell my friends. She shared my feelings, as I learned when she confessed later that evening. I never thought I'd meet someone so grounded and refreshing, she said, smiling in a way that made me feel invincible. From that day forward, we were inseparable. Within weeks, we were spending every free moment together. The chemistry was undeniable, and the connection went beyond physical attraction. We talked about everything, our dreams, our pasts, and the lives we wanted to build. 18 months later, we stood hand in hand, exchanging vows. Our early married life felt like a dream. We moved into a spacious apartment and began saving for a home, full of plans for a future that seemed bright and limitless. The first years were marked by passion and shared ambition. She excelled in her corporate career, while I thrived in mine, traveling occasionally, but always eager to come home to her. We were a team, and I was convinced that nothing could break us. But life, as I would soon learn, has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. By 2016, the honeymoon phase of our marriage had faded, but I thought that was normal. Life had become busier for both of us. My role as a director of a technical sales company required frequent travel, while her career was taking off with demanding hours and high-stakes projects. We were both ambitious, and I believed we were building something solid together. At first, I didn't mind her longer work hours. She often came home late, explaining it was crucial for her to climb the corporate ladder. "It's just temporary," she'd reassure me, giving a tired but affectionate smile. "Once I'm established, things will calm down." But things didn't calm down. If anything, they intensified. Late nights at the office became the norm, and so did her absence from our weekends. She began attending what she called work outings with increasing frequency, first once a month, then once a week, and then even more often. I tried to adjust, telling myself that this was a phase we'd eventually get through. After all, I wasn't home all the time either, traveling for a few days every 5 weeks or so, but when I was home, I craved the connection we used to share. One evening, as she breezed in after another late night, I tried to start a conversation. "Can we talk about how distant we've become?" I asked, attempting to keep my voice calm despite the frustration building inside me. She barely looked up from taking off her shoes. "You're gone too much to notice," she replied curtly. "I'm just trying to make this work." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I felt defensive, but also guilty, wondering if my travel schedule really was the problem. "If it's my being away, I can cut back," I offered. But the discussion didn't go anywhere. Instead, it devolved into circular arguments that left us both drained and nothing resolved. Looking back, those arguments were a warning sign. They weren't about late hours or travel. They were about the growing chasm between us. Small irritations began to surface. She'd snap at me for forgetting to unload the dishwasher. I'd get annoyed when she checked her phone during dinner. Even our intimate moments grew fewer and farther between. I couldn't ignore the rejection I felt when she brushed off my advances with vague excuses about being tired or stressed. I tried to compensate. On the weekends I wasn't traveling, I planned thoughtful date nights or cooked her favorite meals. but more often than not, she'd cancel, citing last-minute work commitments.
Yeah.
The turning point came one Friday evening. I had planned a special dinner, a rare chance to reconnect. The table was set with candles and her favorite wine, and I was eager for us to have some time alone. But when she walked in, she barely noticed the effort I'd put in. "I'm sorry," she said hurriedly. "I have to meet some coworkers tonight. It's important." I felt something snap inside me. "Do you even care that I went out of my way to do this for us?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. She sighed, looking annoyed. "You're overreacting. It's just one night." It's not just one night, though. It's every night. When was the last time we spent time together? She rolled her eyes. "Don't start this again." Her dismissiveness stung more than I could put into words. I let the argument drop, but the damage was done. That night, as I cleaned up the uneaten meal, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. And maybe she'd already decided I wasn't worth holding on to. And as 2017 rolled around, the cracks widened, her late nights continued, and so did the arguments. But what hurt the most wasn't the fights, it was the silence. The once effortless conversations we shared were now replaced by strained exchanges or long stretches of quiet. I found myself retreating into my own thoughts, questioning everything. Was I being unreasonable? Was I failing her as a husband, or was there something more to her behavior that I couldn't see? I started noticing things that didn't add up. A perfume I didn't recognize lingering on her clothes. Her growing defensiveness whenever I asked about her work outings. The way she always kept her phone close, even in the middle of the night. My gut told me something was off, but I pushed the thought away. "She's just stressed," I told myself. "You're overthinking this." But deep down, I couldn't ignore the unease building inside me. Our marriage, once full of passion and shared dreams, now felt like a house of cards teetering on the edge of collapse. And no matter how hard I tried to hold it together, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. It was a cold February evening in 2018, when everything I thought I knew about my life shattered. That night started like so many others. My wife breezed through the door, her work bag slung over her shoulder, and exhaustion etched on her face. As usual, she mumbled something about a late meeting, barely pausing to acknowledge me before retreating to her room to catch up on emails. I wanted to believe her, I wanted to trust her, but something about her detachment had been gnawing at me for months. That unease turned into full-blown suspicion the next day when I offered to help unload groceries from her car. While grabbing a bag from the back seat, something caught my eye. A flash of pink under the passenger seat. I bent down and pulled it out. A bra. Her bra. I knew it was hers because she favored a particular brand, but it didn't make sense. Why was it in her car, tucked beneath the seat? My stomach twisted as a wave of nausea hit me. My mind raced, grasping for innocent explanations. Maybe it fell out of her gym bag, I thought. But deep down, I knew better. She hadn't been to the gym in weeks. When I walked back into the house, she was waiting in the kitchen, a casual smile on her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she joked, her tone light and unconcerned. I forced a laugh and shook my head. "Just tired," I muttered, hiding the bra behind my back as I dropped the grocery bags on the counter. She didn't press further, and I didn't confront her. My heart was pounding too hard to think straight. That night, I barely slept, turning over every interaction, every late night, every excuse in my head. Was I losing my mind? Oh, was I about to uncover something I didn't want to see? The next evening, she left for another work outing, this time with barely a glance in my direction. As soon as she was out the door, I grabbed my second phone and slipped my work cell into the back seat of her car. I didn't want to track her. I needed to. My gut was screaming, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The little blue dot on the screen told me she was heading downtown, to the same bar she often mentioned in passing. I followed, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I felt like a stranger in my own body, a man I didn't recognize, desperate to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I parked across the street from the bar, my eyes scanning every face that passed through its doors. Nearly an hour later, I saw her. She stepped out, laughing, with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and exuded confidence. He placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her to his car. My heart dropped into my stomach as I watched him pull her close and kiss her. This can't be happening. Not her. Not us. I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. I wanted to scream, to burst out of my car and confront them, but I was frozen, numb. Watching them climb into his car and drive off felt like an out-of-body experience. I followed them, barely able to keep my emotions in check. 10 minutes later, they pulled into a hotel parking lot. They stepped out, holding hands, and walked inside as if they had done this 1,000 times before. It was in that moment, sitting alone in my car with the engine running, that everything inside me broke. I pounded my fists against the steering wheel, tears streaming down my face. The betrayal was suffocating. The person I loved, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, had become a stranger. I couldn't stay there. The sight of them disappearing into the hotel was more than I could bear. I drove aimlessly, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. Was it the late nights? The perfunctory kisses? The growing distance in her eyes? I wanted to blame myself, but a deeper part of me knew this wasn't my fault. I ended up at a quiet tavern on the outskirts of town. The bartender, a kind woman with a warm smile, asked if I was okay. "You look like someone's taken the wind out of your sails," she said. "You could say that," I replied, managing a bitter smile as I ordered a drink. A man at the bar struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, I was spilling everything to him. He listened without judgment, nodding as I talked about the betrayal and my confusion about what to do next. "You've got two choices now," he said, his voice steady. "You can let this break you, or you can let it set you free. It's up to you." His words hit me like a lifeline. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo. I had to confront her, even if it tore me apart. When I got home, she was already in bed. The next morning, I asked her directly, "Are you having an affair?" She froze for a moment before scoffing, "You're being ridiculous. There's nothing going on." Her denial was a knife to the heart. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded and let her believe I was convinced. Inside, though, I was done. I had seen enough, and I knew there was no going back. In the days following my discovery, my emotions oscillated between fury, despair, and a hollow sense of disbelief. I didn't confront her again, not directly. Her gaslighting and denials from that first confrontation echoed in my mind, sharp and grating. She acted as if my suspicions were an insult to her integrity, as if my asking had somehow wronged her. Yet every time she left for one of her so-called work outings, my chest tightened. I knew the truth, but I couldn't bear to hear her deny it again. At night, I would lie on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of her walking into that hotel. My mind tried to piece together how we had gone from sharing dreams to living in this hollow pretense. A part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand honesty, but I couldn't. Her refusal to admit the truth wasn't just frustrating, it was humiliating. I felt like a ghost in my own marriage, never really alone again. One evening, after another icy dinner eaten mostly in silence, I went to the bar where I'd met Rai. He was there again, sitting at his usual spot. There was something grounding about him, his calm demeanor, his no-nonsense way of speaking. I opened up to him, spilling the weight of my suspicions and the pain of her betrayal. He listened intently, taking a long sip of his beer before speaking. "You don't owe her anything," he said firmly, his voice low but resolute. "She made her choice, now make yours." His words hung in the air. I had been so consumed by my own pain that I hadn't thought about my choices. I felt trapped, like I had no control over what was happening to me. But Rye's words were a reminder. I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to endure this. I just want peace, I said, my voice breaking. Peace away from all of this. Rye nodded. Then take it. Look, I've got a trailer on my land. It's not fancy, but it's livable. You're welcome to it if you need a place to clear your head. The idea of leaving, of starting over somewhere quiet and detached from the pain, seemed impossible at first. But that night, as I stared at the empty space beside me on the couch, it began to feel like my only option. I couldn't fix what was broken, not alone, and she clearly wasn't willing to meet me halfway. I realized I wasn't staying out of love. I was staying out of fear. Fear of what leaving would mean, but staying was killing me. I started making quiet plans. While she was at work, I began packing my belongings. Just the essentials, nothing that would raise suspicion. I moved things bit by bit into the trailer Rye had offered. It was a humble space, but it felt like a sanctuary. The mountains surrounded it, offering a silence that was both unfamiliar and comforting. I found myself sitting outside for hours, breathing in the crisp air and letting my mind wander. One afternoon, as I unpacked a box of books in the trailer, Rye stopped by. He leaned against the door frame, watching me for a moment before speaking. "You look lighter already," he said with a small grin, "like you're finally breathing again." End of. I smiled back. It's not easy, but yeah, I feel like I'm starting to. Good, he said. Don't let her drag you down anymore. You deserve better, man. Remember that. His words stayed with me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Not for my marriage, but for myself. Maybe I could rebuild. Maybe I could find peace after all. Back at the apartment, her behavior shifted slightly. She seemed to sense my withdrawal, softening her tone and occasionally trying to engage me in small talk, but I saw through it. She wasn't trying to fix our marriage. She was trying to maintain the status quo. She still left for her work outings, still brushed off my attempts to connect. One night, as she was getting ready to leave again, she asked casually, "Where are you going?" when she saw me grab my jacket. "Meeting up with some friends," I said, my voice neutral. She hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "You've never mentioned them before. Who are they?" Shrugged, using her own words against her. "You wouldn't know them. And you wouldn't enjoy the shop talk." Her mouth tightened, but she didn't press further. That was the moment I knew. I was already halfway out the door emotionally. Now, I just needed to make it official. Over the next week, I finalized my move. On the day she left for a work trip, I packed up the last of my things. Before leaving, I wrote a short note and placed it on the kitchen table beside my wedding ring. I hope it was worth it. As I walked out, I didn't feel triumphant or angry, just free. The weight I had carried for months seemed to lift with every step I took toward my car. The decision to leave wasn't easy, but it was the only choice that made sense. That evening, as I sat in the trailer, surrounded by silence and the comforting embrace of the mountains, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It wasn't complete, and it wasn't without pain, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough. The morning I left felt surreal, like stepping into someone else's life. I woke up early, the apartment bathed in the soft gray light of dawn. The air was heavy with stillness, almost expectant, as if the universe knew this was the end of one chapter and the start of another. I moved quietly, loading the last of my belongings into the car. My heart felt heavy, but my steps were deliberate. Every motion carried a finality I couldn't ignore. On the kitchen table, I placed my wedding ring and the note I'd written the night before. The words were simple, almost stark. I hope it was worth it. There was no anger in the message, just a hollow reflection of everything that had been lost. I stood there for a moment, staring at the ring. It caught the early light, a faint glimmer that reminded me of the hope I once had for us. But that hope was gone now, replaced by a quiet determination to move forward. As I closed the door behind me for the last time, a wave of mixed emotions washed over me. I felt sorrow for the life we had built and for the dreams we'd shared that would never come to fruition. But alongside the grief was a sense of liberation, like I was finally stepping out of a shadow that had loomed over me for far too long. The drive to the trailer was quiet and reflective. The further I got from the city, the more I felt a weight lifting from my chest. The buildings thinned out, replaced by open fields and winding roads. Soon the mountains came into view, their jagged peaks cutting into the sky like promises of peace. The air seemed to change too, becoming cooler, cleaner, like it was cleansing me of everything I was leaving behind. When I arrived, the trailer stood waiting for me, nestled among the trees. It wasn't much, just a modest 26-foot space with a small deck Rye had helped me build, but it felt like a sanctuary. The mountains loomed protectively in the distance, their silence a balm for my frayed nerves. I carried my boxes inside, one by one, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. The trailer smelled faintly of pine and fresh paint, a reminder of the hours I'd spent preparing it for this moment. I set my things down, then stepped outside to take in the view. The sun was beginning to rise, casting golden light across the hills and painting the landscape in hues of orange and pink. For the first time in what felt like forever, I took a deep breath and exhaled fully. The air filled my lungs, crisp and cool, carrying the scent of earth and wildflowers. It was a stark contrast to the stale, suffocating air of the apartment I'd left behind. "She's lost everything we had," I murmured to myself, my voice breaking the stillness. "I'm starting over." The days that followed were a mixture of quiet reflection and adjustment. Living in the trailer forced me to simplify my life. The space was small, but it felt intentional. Every item I brought had a purpose. Without the distractions of city life or the chaos of my marriage, I found myself reconnecting with things I hadn't paid attention to in years. Mornings became a ritual. I'd wake up early, brew a cup of coffee, and step onto the deck to watch the sun rise over the mountains. The light would spill over the peaks, illuminating the trees and casting long shadows across the ground. Birds chirped in the distance, their songs blending with the rustling of leaves in the wind. It was peaceful, in a way that felt almost sacred. In the evenings, I'd sit by a small fire pit Rye had helped me set up, staring at the flames as they flickered and danced. The quiet moments gave me time to reflect on everything I'd been through. I thought about the love I'd shared with her, the betrayal, and the emptiness that had followed. But in those moments of solitude, I also began to feel something else. Gratitude. Gratitude for the clarity I'd found and for the chance to start anew. Rye checked in on me occasionally, offering advice or just sitting with me on the deck, sipping a beer as we watched the sun dip below the horizon. "You're doing good out here," he said one evening, his voice steady. "It's not easy, but you're handling it." I nodded, staring out at the fading light. "It's still hard," I admitted, "but this feels right." "That's all that matters," he replied. "You've got a second chance now, don't waste it." His words stuck with me. The pain of leaving her, of leaving everything behind, was still there, but it no longer consumed me. Instead, it felt like a scar, something that would always be a part of me, but no longer defined who I was. By the end of June, I had settled into a routine. I spent my days hiking the nearby trails, working remotely, and slowly rebuilding my sense of self. The mountains became my refuge, their stillness a reminder that life goes on, no matter how broken you feel. And as I stood there, surrounded by their quiet strength, I realized something. I wasn't just running away from my past, I was running toward a future I hadn't yet imagined. The first few weeks in the mountains were quiet, almost too quiet. At first, the stillness felt foreign, even unsettling. Without the constant buzz of the city or the emotional chaos of my old life, I was left with nothing but my own thoughts. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice something remarkable. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full full of bird songs, rustling leaves, and the distant babble of a stream nearby. It was as if the mountains were speaking, telling me to slow down and listen. I threw myself into building a routine. Morning started with long trail runs through the forest, the cool air invigorating as I pushed myself further each day. The trails twisted and turned, revealing hidden meadows, sparkling creeks, and breathtaking views of the valley below. Running became my therapy, a way to work through the lingering pain of my past while reconnecting with my body and mind. It wasn't just about fitness, it was about reclaiming control over my life. One afternoon, while on a particularly steep trail, I noticed someone ahead of me, struggling with a flat tire on their mountain bike. I jogged closer and saw a young woman crouched by the bike, looking frustrated. "Need a hand?" I asked, catching my breath. She looked up, her face lighting up with relief. "I wouldn't say no. This thing has been giving me trouble all day." I crouched beside her, helping to fix the tire while we chatted. Her name was Emma, and she had recently moved to the area, drawn by the same promise of solitude and self-discovery that had brought me here. She was younger than me by a few years, with a quick wit and an easy laugh that felt like a breath of fresh air. By the time the tire was fixed, we were laughing like old friends. "You're a lifesaver," she said, standing up and brushing dirt off her hands. "What's your name?" "Paul," I replied, smiling. "And you?" "Emma," she said. "Nice to meet you, Paul. You're quite the mountain man. This life suits you." I chuckled at her observation. It's peace I didn't know I needed. We parted ways that day, but it wasn't long before we ran into each other again, this time at a local farmer's market. She invited me to join her for a hike the following weekend, and I found myself saying yes without hesitation. Over the next few months, Emma and I became close. We hiked, explored hidden trails, and shared stories about our lives. She was kind, curious, and full of energy, with a way of seeing the world that reminded me of how much beauty there still was in life. Our connection wasn't rushed or complicated. It was easy, like the trails we walked together. She once asked me about my past, her tone careful but curious. I told her about the betrayal, the pain, and the decision to leave it all behind. She listened without interrupting, her eyes filled with empathy. "That must have been so hard," she said softly. "But you're here now, and it sounds like you've come a long way." I nodded, feeling a weight lift as I shared my story. "I have, and being here, it's helped me see things more clearly. I don't regret leaving. It was the best decision I've ever made." She smiled. "It shows. You seem lighter, like you found yourself again." Her words stayed with me. She was right. I did feel lighter. Living in the mountains had stripped away the noise and distractions, forcing me to confront myself. And in doing so, I'd rediscovered parts of me I thought I'd lost. My love for nature, my sense of curiosity, and my ability to find joy in the simple things. Friendships began to blossom as well. Rai introduced me to his circle, a tight-knit group of locals who embraced me like one of their own. We spent evenings around campfires, swapping stories and laughing under the stars. Rai's family invited me to dinners, where his kids would tug at my sleeve asking about my trail runs and mountain adventures. One night, as we sat by the fire, Rai turned to me, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. "You've come a long way, Paul," he said. "I can see it in the way you carry yourself now. You've got that spark back." I smiled, looking out at the dark silhouette of the mountains. "It's the mountains," I said. "They have a way of healing you." "Nah," he replied with a grin. "It's you. The mountains just gave you the space to figure it out." And by the end of 2019, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The pain of my past no longer defined me. It had become a part of my story, a chapter I'd moved beyond. Emma and I weren't rushing into anything, but our connection was undeniable. She often joked about my mountain man lifestyle, and I laughed because it was true. I had embraced a simpler way of living, one that brought me peace and fulfillment. I still thought about my ex-wife from time to time, not with anger, but with a quiet acceptance. Her betrayal had been devastating, but it had also set me free. It had pushed me to find a new path, one that led me to the mountains, to new friendships, and to myself. As I stood on a ridge one crisp winter morning, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. The coffee shop in town was one of my favorite places, a quiet spot where I could work, enjoy a cup of black coffee, and watch life unfold. That morning, the sun poured through the large windows, casting long golden streaks across the wooden floors. It was the kind of peaceful scene that had become my new normal, a stark contrast to the chaos of my past. But that peace was about to be disrupted. I had just finished typing an email when I heard someone call my name. Oh. The voice was unmistakable, though I hadn't heard it in over a year. I turned, and there she was, my ex-wife. She was standing across the street, waving, her expression a mix of surprise and nervous excitement. My stomach dropped. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen her, to slip out the back and avoid whatever this was. But something rooted me to the spot. She crossed the street quickly, her heels clicking against the pavement, and stopped just a few feet from me. Her hair was tied back in the way I used to love, and she wore a familiar perfume that stirred memories I had worked so hard to bury. "Paul," she said again, her voice softer now. "I've been looking for you." I stood there, my coffee growing cold in my hand, unsure of what to say. Finally, I gestured toward an empty bench outside the shop. "Let's talk," I said simply. As we sat down, she started speaking almost immediately, her words tumbling over each other. "I am so sorry for everything," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know I hurt you. I made so many mistakes, and I've regretted them every single day since you left." Her voice cracked and she paused to compose herself. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "After you left, everything fell apart. My job, my relationship with him, it all crumbled. I lost everything, Paul. And I realized how much I had thrown away, how much I hurt you. I've been trying to find you because I want to make things right." She looked at me then, her eyes pleading. "Please, Paul, can we start over? Can we try again?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. The man I had been a year ago might have crumbled under the weight of her apology, desperate to salvage what we once had. But I wasn't that man anymore. I took a deep breath, the mountain air that still lingered in my lungs grounding me. "You can't undo the damage," I said, my voice steady. "This is where it ends." She flinched as if I had struck her, tears spilling over. "Paul, please, I know I don't deserve it, but I love you. I never stop loving you." I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. You wouldn't have lied to my face, night after night, while you betrayed everything we built together." Her sobs grew louder, drawing the attention of a few passers-by. I softened my tone, not out of pity, but out of finality. "I don't hate you. I've moved past that. But I can't go back. I've built a life for myself. A better life. And it doesn't include you." She reached out, her hand brushing against mine. "Please, Paul. Just give me a chance to prove I've changed. To show you that I'm not that person anymore." I pulled my hand away gently. "It's not about who you are now. It's about what you've done. You made your choice, and I made mine. I've found peace, and I won't give it up. Not for you, not for anyone." She sat there for a long moment, her shoulders trembling as she cried. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, only a deep sense of closure. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting myself. Finally, she stood, wiping her tears. "I understand," she said quietly. "I hope you find happiness, Paul. Truly." I nodded, watching as she walked away, her figure disappearing into the crowd. I sat there for a while, staring at the mountains in the distance. They stood tall and unwavering, their peaks brushing the sky. For the first time since I'd left her, I felt free. Not just from her, but from the weight of the past. I had faced her, spoken my truth, and walked away with my boundaries intact. As I sipped my now cold coffee, I smiled to myself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that was more than enough. The late autumn air in the mountains carried a crispness that I had come to love. The mornings were colder now, with frost glazing the edges of the leaves and the first hints of snow dusting the peaks. I often found myself sitting on the small deck outside my trailer, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, staring out at the endless expanse of forest and sky. The silence of the mountains had a way of amplifying my thoughts, making it the perfect backdrop for reflection. It was on one such morning that I received her final email. My ex-wife's name in my inbox no longer evoked the visceral reactions it once had. I opened it without hesitation, knowing this would likely be the last communication between us. Her message was lengthy, filled with apologies, reflections, and a plea for reconciliation. She spoke of her continued regret, how she had sought therapy, and how she was working to rebuild her life. At the end, she asked if I might consider meeting her one last time to see if there was any way we could reconnect. I read the email twice, not out of indecision, but to honor her words. Then I drafted my reply. It was short, polite, and final. Thank you for your honesty. I'm glad to hear you're finding clarity and healing. But I've moved on. I wish you the best, but there's no place for us in each other's futures. After hitting send, I felt no pangs of regret, no lingering doubt. Just peace. Later that day, I hiked up a trail that had become my favorite. It wound through dense evergreens, climbing steadily until it opened up to a ridge with a panoramic view of the valley below. Standing there, the cool wind brushing against my face, I thought about how far I had come. The man who had left the city in shambles a year ago felt like a distant memory. In his place was someone stronger, more grounded, and infinitely more at peace. I had learned many lessons along the way. The most important was this: your worth isn't defined by someone else's choices. Betrayal hurts, but it doesn't have to break you. It can be the catalyst for something better, a life where you prioritize your own happiness, your own growth. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the mountains in hues of gold and purple, I spoke aloud, as if to an invisible audience. Seeking revenge on those who have hurt us only brings fleeting satisfaction, like a flame that burns brightly before fading into ashes of bitterness. True freedom lies in letting go, refusing to cling to the past and boldly moving forward. Those who betray others will eventually face the consequences of their choices, for karma spares no one. We don't need to repay the pain they caused, as time will bring justice on its own. Forgiving and letting go isn't about whether they deserve it, but because we deserve to live a life of peace, happiness, and fulfillment.